Hi folks, this is Avery Malden again, and we are going to be replacing the starter in Barry today because, as you probably can tell from the intro of the video, the original starter has finally went bad. And so in just a moment I'm going to be driving this to my grandfather's house to replace the starter. What I'm going to do, I have it parked uphill because I'm going to start the engine by first putting the ignition in the run section. I'm going to put the transmission in neutral. I'm going to push Barry down the hill, and then once I push Barry down the hill, I'm going to get back inside, put the transmission in second gear, slowly let the clutch out, and then immediately depress the clutch, and then that will start the engine. Then I will let the engine warm up and drive it to my grandfather's house, and there we will begin the starter replacement. I have already purchased a remanufactured starter from AutoZone, so in just a moment we will be driving Barry to my grandfather's house to do the replacement. I have already opened the starter, so we cannot do an unpacking video. However, we will be doing the installation. So I will be right back. I am going to start the vehicle and then we will drive to my grandfather's house. Okay, so I am currently driving to my grandfather's house, and we are going to be replacing the starter. The engine is running fine. I have the air conditioning system turned on, and we're going to be going, and we're going to be replacing the starter on the truck. Here I am at my grandfather's house. There's Barry over there, and up front we have some of the fancy tools that we are going to be using in order to replace the starter. We have two jack stands. This is what's going to hold the vehicle up in the air while we are working on it. And then we also have this called a hydraulic floor jack, and that is going to lift the vehicle in order to fit the jack stands underneath. And one thing that you should always do prior to replacing anything electrical on your vehicle, you must disconnect the negative black lead or the minus battery terminal from your car battery, because if you do not disconnect this terminal, there could be a ground out fire or something really bad could happen, and we do not want your vehicle to be burned to the ground or something very serious destroyed in the electrical system, example the computer or anything of that nature. So what you want to do is take a wrench or basically any kind of hand tool that can loosen a nut and loosen the battery terminal and completely remove it from the post, and make sure it's not touching the chassis of the vehicle, including the body or anything that could have electrical current. Make sure you have it isolated and away from anything that it could make contact to, and complete the circuit, because remember, most of the things in common vehicles are chassis ground, and that's where you got to be careful. So always disconnect your negative battery lead before you begin any type of electrical work on your vehicle. With the negative terminal disconnected, we can now successfully begin our replacement of the starter. Before we raise the vehicle in the air, one thing that you must do is you must make sure that your vehicle is in park, or in this case in gear, and that your parking brake is on. That is very important, especially when you are working underneath a vehicle that is going to be lifted in midair. The next thing that we want to do in order to get underneath for easy access, we want to lift the vehicle in the air. So we are going to use the floor jack to temporarily lift the vehicle in the air long enough to slide the jack stands underneath in order to hold the vehicle in place. So we are just going to use this, and we are going to lift the vehicle up in the air. Just like so. With the floor jack temporarily holding the vehicle in the air, you want to slide the jack stand underneath the vehicle's front suspension, and then you pull the safety pin out and raise the bar until it comes in contact and is resting in the dead center underneath your suspension, and then you insert the safety pin, and then you can slowly lower the floor stand, or the floor jack, excuse me, onto the jack stand, and it should go something like this. Now that we have successfully installed our jack stands on either side of the suspension, one thing that you will need to do, that every mechanic will tell you must do, take your floor jack and just raise it until it is touching the bottom of the differential, just to give it extra support, because it's better to be safe than sorry. This is just in case of an emergency. And before you ever go underneath your vehicle to do any kind of work on it, before you go under it, give the vehicle a little bit of a shake to make sure that it is stabilized and that it is isolated and it is not going anywhere. In this case, we just shook it and it isn't moving, so this means that we're good. This right here really will make your life much easier. This is called a trolley or a creeper, and you can use one of these to easily roll underneath the vehicle to service it and then roll back out to access your toolbox. It really does make life much easier. We are now underneath the vehicle, and I'm going to show you where the starter is located. You come right to the front where the engine and transmission join in connection. And if you will look over here, you should see a cylinder. That is the starter. And there is a bolt right here, and then there is a bolt right there. That one will probably be a little hard to access, but I think we should be able to access that with not a big problem. Then the wire terminals on the far rear of the starter, so we will disconnect that here momentarily. The first thing that I am going to do is remove both of these bolts and get the starter out of this. I have successfully removed the first bolt from the starter on the top. I was expecting it to be a nightmare, but it was actually very easy. I reached through here in between the frame and the suspension with this wrench and socket that has a movable head, as you can see here, and I was able to loosen it. So now we just loosen this last bolt and we will remove the wire. And I have successfully removed the starter. There's only one step left, and that is to remove the wire and the bolt on the rear of the starter. And here's the part that I'm really happy about. Right where the I-beam suspension for the passenger side mounts to the frame, and right here where the differential and drive shaft for the front drive are, I was able to very conveniently sit the starter in place while I loosen the screws, so I do not have to have a starter dangling in the air. So now I can safely remove that wire and we can remove the old starter. Alright everybody, I have successfully removed the terminal from the back of the starter. Now this thing should successfully come out. And there it is. And there is the old starter out of the vehicle. Here's a quality comparison of the difference between the old and the refurbished. That's definitely quite a bit of gunk built up on that starter, isn't it? And then here's our refurbished starter, which is going to be taking the place of this old one. It definitely does look much nicer and cleaner. So with that being said, let us get this new starter installed. One thing that would be a good idea prior to replacing your starter is cleaning off your terminal that connects to the starter if it is corroded. You can use sandpaper to sand the terminal if it is corroded. As you can see, mine is not corroded. It actually looks rather healthy. Therefore, I am not going to fiddle-diddle with it because it does not need any sanding. It is not corroded, and this will make just as good as contact as a new terminal would. So, one thing you can do if your vehicle is a daily driver is you can apply a silicone applicant to the terminal that will repel water and prevent it from corroding in the future. That way, if your starter goes bad again, you will know that your terminal is making good contact, and that's one less thing that you would have to inspect prior to diagnosing if your starter is bad or not. With the terminal connected to the new starter, we can now begin to install the starter into the housing. I have one bolt successfully installed. Now both of the mounting bolts are installed. The only thing that we have to do left is tighten both of them, so that way the starter is snug and is successfully mounted in place. Alright, we have successfully completed the installation of our new starter. There's just a few things we have to do left. We have to remove the hydraulic lift, the jack stands, reconnect the battery terminal, And then we get to do the fun part, which is see if this works. So with the hydraulic lift and the jack stands removed, we can reconnect the battery terminal, and then we can go and test it. Now that we have successfully reconnected the battery terminal, we can now do what everybody has been waiting for.
Nice.
That starter sounds nice and healthy. That's exactly what we want. And some of you may be wondering, what am I going to do with the original starter? Well, we are going to take this back to AutoZone because they will give you money for it, because they will send it off and have it rebuilt, and it will probably one day be installed on another Ranger or Bronco II somewhere else in the country. So there you folks have it, the starter replacement in Mr. Barry Fordman. I hope this video was somewhat helpful to anyone replacing a starter in their Bronco II or their Ford Ranger. So with Charger drinking some cold water, we will sign off, and we will see you all next time.